Thank you all for being here on time. We will give people a little bit extra to filter in. I'll drop this in the chat a few times if people do filter in, but these are our agenda notes and attendance. So if you would like to add yourself to the attendees, please do. Welcome, everyone. Lots of people are still trickling in.
Hi, Keith. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, everybody. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Greg?
I'm okay. I'm just marveling at the promise I see of my Zoom meeting. It says, AI Companion can answer your questions about this meeting and more. And that's pretty fabulous. It can answer any question about the meeting.
And more.
And more, yeah.
You can take notes, publish automatic meeting minutes as well.
Yeah, we use the Google Meet version of the minutes and summarization of meetings pretty regularly. It's really helpful.
Yeah, the summarization stuff.
So I'm as far as answering live questions about the meeting, I'll just say I'm still a little bearish on its usefulness.
Well, I was chuckling because it's already telling me it can answer questions and the meeting hasn't even started. So it's like supreme confidence.
All right, well, I'm going to ask it to catch me up on the meeting so far. Let's see what it says. Well, it did catch that I expressed some skepticism about its usefulness. So let's pick that out. All right, so we are coming up on 5 minutes in. We don't have as many as we normally do yet so far. However, I do see Anna here. I think we could probably pick up where we left off last time. I will drop the doc in the chat again for those that have joined since I did it before. Please go ahead and add your name and take a look at future agenda items. If there's anything you want to add, request, or even see what we're going to be discussing next meeting. All right, so before we jump into the continuation from last time, though, we do have, we're coming up on August. August has traditionally been much lower attendance, lots of people on vacations. We wanted to get a feel from the room on if we were to hold August meetings, how many people would actually be here. And if not very many, we'll probably just cancel one or more of those. Any takes on August?
Not on the first week for me.
You will not be here the first week?
Exactly.
I will not be here the last week.
Yeah, I'm out the second week.
What about non-chairs? Everybody else? Hank was going to be gone the first week. And our normal cadence, which weeks would it land on? It would land on the second and fourth week. Okay, and Yogesh, was that the 2nd of August or the second week of August?
No,
Our
I think it
meetings
was
would
2nd
normally.
of August. I should correct it. It's 2nd of August. So
Okay.
next meeting on the session series.
Okay, so there's the 12th and the 26th, I think. So I will not be here the 26th. And I'm okay. Greg's here for both. Okay, a couple people missing the 12th. Okay, Greg, Tomas, what do you think?
It
Jim?
doesn't look like there's a mass of folks who won't be here, so it seems like there'll be critical mass throughout the month. It's my guess.
All right. I think that tracks for my thoughts too. So let's go ahead and keep them on the schedule. If we do end up with low attendance, we can always defer content until future weeks to get more attendance. But tentatively, let's plan on covering the normal amount on those weeks.
Makes sense.
Great. Thank
I
you,
think
everyone.
it doesn't matter whether we have low attendance because the meetings are recorded. What matters is that whether we have speakers for the meetings aligned. So I think that having a low attendance is not a problem. Everybody can see the recordings afterwards.
It's not necessarily a deal blocker, but the interactive discussions during the presentations, I think, are usually pretty valuable to have, more than just a recording. But point taken. All right, so I've added to the notes that we'll keep August. And then I think we can try and pick up where we left off on a presentation. Does that sound good to you, Anna?
Okay. Thank you. Give me just one moment
Sure.
to present. Okay. Hi, everyone. I think this is where we left off last time. So as a reminder, I guess the title of this presentation is a way to bind TDISP and platform attestation reports for confidential VMs. So it's a way to bind the TDISP evidence with the platform attestation reports.
And before we move on to that, if I might, I think as a recap last time, mostly what we covered was the problem statement and leading up to why we would want to do the binding. Is that right? We didn't actually go into any of the actual binding mechanism last time.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay. And I think right at the end last time, there were some statements of you kind of calling into question whether or not binding itself is necessary of the evidence, or if it's like a binding of a policy. But perhaps we should probably get into that as we go along. I just wanted to bring back that context. So.
Okay, sounds good. Let me go through what I have here on the slides, and then we can take it from there and expand the discussion if that looks okay with you.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay. So I'm not sure if I covered that the goal is to find a way to bind that is similar across operating systems and CSPs, And the reason for that is because we want to make it easier for anyone to implement their own verifier. I'm not sure if I went through that. And the proposed solution that we have is that the CVM collects the device attestation evidence and uses this evidence to extend the virtual TPM NV index. There will be a new NV index that we're going to define, and the purpose of that is to able to use it as a PCR-like structure and be able to extend the device attestation evidence to that. The NV index will then get signed using the VTPM attestation key, which is already part of the platform attestation report. So that completes the binding part. And I do have a figure later on to see this visually as well. But before I get to that, I do have a primer on TPM NV indexes. I'm not sure if people are familiar with them in this forum or not. I can go through it.
Yeah, let's not make the assumption that people are. But real
Okay.
quick, as you go through this, my question is, so you mentioned specifically VTPM.
Mhm.
Is this possible with any type of TPM, or is there something specific with the virtual TPMs that is needed to accomplish what you're going to be proposing?
No, the reason I'm saying VTPM is because this is in the context of a confidential VM. So the VTPM is the instance of the TPM that is visible to the confidential virtual machine.
Yep, understood. Thanks. I just didn't know whether you were extending TPMs in a way that's only possible with VTPM, or if it's just in the
No,
context of cloud, it would be a virtual TPM.
oh, right. Yes.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
this is part of the TPM spec. There's nothing special about it. I'm just saying that in the TPM 2.0 implementation already defines that a TPM instance can have some non-volatile storage. Some of this non-volatile storage is reserved for something that is called an NV index. So I'm just using one of them, but there's nothing different about the spec for that. So this non-volatile storage, according to the spec, stores TPM internal data. This is whatever the TPM needs in order to become functional, like counters and clocks and seeds and so on. And also is also being used to store user-defined data, and they can be accessed via NV index. So NV index is just a handle or a pointer to a specific non-volatile memory region. And that pointer or fat pointer, whatever you want to call it, includes the size of the data that you are referring to, some attributes that define the behavior and the access rules in order to access that NV index. Those attributes are defined at creation time when the NV index is created and cannot be changed afterwards. For example, NV data acts if and then the non-volatile data acts as a counter, as a raw data or PCR, which hierarchy can read and write to it, and so on. So those are static attributes that are defined at creation time and remain the same for the lifetime of the NV index and the associated storage for that. And the NV index also includes access control policy for accessing the NV index. This has to do with the dynamic behavior on how to access that NV index. For example, if it requires a password in order to access it, or a key, or if a specific PCR value needs to be present in the system in order to access the NV index, and so on. So this is just a primer on what the TPM 2.0 specification says about NV indexes. All this remains the same. We don't propose any changes to that. All we say is that we want to define a new NV index that is going to be acting as a PCR. So it can get extended with a hash of each of the TDISP device attestation evidence. And along with that, we need to create a file to store the event log records related to the NV index. So whenever whenever a driver wants to extend the NV index with some TDISP attestation evidence, the associated event log will also be written and with a record that will say, hey, I've extended the NV index with that hash value. And I have the flow here as well. So every time a new TDISP device attestation evidence is retrieved by the CVM would generate first the hash of the TDISP device attestation evidence, which includes the device certificate, measurements, and interface report, as well as just an identifier for the device. That could be something like the device ID. And use all this information and create a digest. Then this digest will be extended to the NV index. So whatever the NV index hold before, it adds the digest in order to calculate the new NV index value. Let me just quickly finish that flow, and then I will address the raised hand. Then a new event log record is being created that will say that this NV index was had an extension event, and this digest was the one that was added to it. And then the flow will append this new event log record in the event log file. Yes, Keith.
Greg's hand was up first. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, thanks. And maybe you'll answer this in following slides, but I'm pondering the use case where a relying party wishes to have a long-running conversation with a TDISP-based device, and basically over time wants to challenge it with different nonce values. So I'm imagining in my head that every time there's a nonce challenge, that this bullet you just went through would have to be done again to record the attestation evidence produced by the TDISP device that contains the nonce. Does that work with this flow? Am I, or is that something that does work or doesn't work, or maybe how I'm thinking of it just doesn't make sense, or?
It does. I'm not sure if the TDISP specification allows for a nonce to be added whenever there is a request for TDISP device attestation evidence. I have to go and look that up. I'm not sure.
And if we get a little more abstract, if there's anything configurable about what can be included in the attestation report from the device, perhaps for example, I guess a nonce is a specific example, but if it generally supports, just arbitrary data or arbitrary hash being given to it reflecting something else, and I guess a related question is what if something about the attestation evidence changes over time, right? I don't know how the device may or may not change. Getting fresh, getting those updated values. So and I hear your point about whatever TDISP, we can only do better than whatever TDISP supports. So then the question becomes, what's going on here? Does this allow repeated, repeated extensions of the NV index of the NV index value plus the associated log for the same TDISP device, I think is probably what it boils down to.
Right. Yeah. So I think the event log will show the history of what were the TDISP evidence initially and then however they changed. We could just use the nonce to calculate the digest. If you think that's meaningful. I'm just not sure if there is a way for the same way that we have today for the platform attestation report, where the user can provide a nonce, and that nonce is going to be part of the platform attestation report. I'm not sure if that is supported in TDISP.
I think in my head, there's two different scenarios that are, I think I'm thinking. One is the nonce scenario where the relying party at some point wants to challenge with the nonce. And the other is if for whatever reason, it could be any reason, is this only like an OS thing, kernel thing that can only happen once at the beginning of time? Or is this something that basically, if for whatever reason, the code basically, the application or workload kind of code or relying party code wants to basically say, I really just want a fresh snapshot, captured. Can it make it happen? Or is this like you're at the mercy of some kernel driver or something that only did something, boot time?
Yeah, so it can be done at any time, but the catch is that the first time that the TDISP attestation evidence are going to be evaluated and verified that they look okay according to the verifier, then the CVM will go ahead and accept that device, which means that that device can now have access to that CVM's memory. And if for some reason it was the wrong choice and we shouldn't accept that device, then that malicious device can potentially corrupt the CVM's memory. So even though you can do attestation again, it might be too late.
I think we're envisioning the two, your scenario and my scenario have different relying parties. I think your relying party is whatever, it's the CVM or host OS or something allowing the device to bind. And I'm imagining a relying party that's perhaps releasing a secret to a bound device and only wants to release it to a device that's bound to to a secure platform. And so that's at a different point in time, right? And so
Okay.
My questions are answered.
Okay.
Give the floor over to Keith.
So it was good. I had two questions. One of them was on that topic around like nonces and injection of material from relying parties. But since we talked about that, the other is what you're doing here with the NV index and this event log record looks a lot like PCRs and the event logs that go along with PCRs. Why the NV index instead of, say, like PCR 13?
That's a great question. The reason I'm using an NV index instead of a PCR is because we are short on PCRs, and nothing there is that is free and available just for NV to be used for TDISP. And if we don't, and if we're gonna, it's not gonna be just a TDISP related PCR, and we have to share it with other use cases. I'm not sure if that is supported to be able to add to the PCR log post the exit boot services.
At least in systems that we've built and that we've seen elsewhere, you can have an additional log. We use the TCG's canonical event log for post boot event messages. But I get your point. But what you're doing here, the reason why it looks like a PCR is you're essentially creating another PCR for yourself.
Exactly.
Okay. Just with more of the implementation happening in outside of the TPM device, like the hashing and things is done manually instead of by the device.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, exactly.
Thank you.
If we can reuse an existing one, or if we can share the PCR that IMA uses, then that will be perfectly fine.
Okay. I see Gary's hand up, but I saw another one up first. Did it go back down? Was that Tomas?
It
Did I
was,
see
I backed down. I put my observation in the chat.
I see. All right. Gary? Did you also have a question, Gary?
Sorry, I had trouble with the mute button. I put my question in the chat, but I guess I'm also kind of a little confused why we're using why it's proposed to use PCR or PCR-like representations for the evidence versus something that's actually a little bit more expressive, like what was defined in TCG for the manifest. So, and I know that there are people on this call who essentially co-authored that spec. So, in fact, it's also my understanding that cloud service providers are actually doing this today in their SVSM implementations. So, maybe that could, yeah, somebody could
Is
explain.
it the same point there? Because if so, let's kind of maybe group them together and discuss it as a whole. Is the main point on why PCR-like device is why have a history? Is that the
No,
is that the main-
I think it's the history is one thing. I think I'm just saying why even the most recent measurements from the device, why should they be relayed this way in the context of VTPM? Oh, it's even up leveled. I think yeah, but the manifest itself I think it could be extended with history. That's what's required. I don't think the standard really discusses it. But
Okay.
okay.
So I think we have like two flavors of questions then. Like one is why this this notion of evidence is being sent for the relying party at all in this form, and then also the why the history. And I don't know if Isama, if you have more on that, or if Anna should take a crack at that discussion before moving on to your question.
So my question was building more on Greg's question, so you can have this discussion before I come back to that.
Okay. So the first question was why include, so I'm not familiar with the TCG SPDM manifest. So I need to educate myself on that. But if I understand it correctly, one of the questions was why even include it? Why even include the TDIS device attestation evidence?
No, it was more along the representation of the evidence. Why is it
Okay.
in the VTPM versus relaying it as a manifest, which, as I mentioned, some cloud service providers are accepting that, and that apparently, I mean, I don't know, I couldn't find whether Coconut supports it, but apparently there are some SVSM deployments out there that do support that.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, sorry, I cannot respond to that. I'm not familiar here with that. I'll have to take a look at it and then I can ping you offline. The second question is why is it important to keep the history of interactions versus just a snapshot tied to the current RA session? I'm not sure what RA stands for.
Remote attestation.
Ah, okay. I think it's important to have the history of interactions because because it allows a relying party to have a policy, and I think I have it later on in my slides as well, to say, hey, right now the version of firmware that the device has is great and patched and looks safe. But initially, when the CVM was launched, the TDIS device that was attached had an older version of the firmware that has this known vulnerability. It allows the relying party to examine that history and say that, hey, because of that potentially compromised TDISP firmware, the CVM itself might be compromised now. So even though the TDISP device has been patched, I do not want to trust it. That is the reason for the history.
And some of it might relate to like when new events are being added. You say that it's every time the TDISP device attestation is retrieved by the CVM. Is this just when there is a like change in topology, like when there's a new device or the device reports a change, or is it more often? Because you have a separate thing here for when the remote verifier wants to invoke an attestation and it's not remeasuring these things. So how often is this middle step occurring?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that this is open. TDISP defines a mechanism where the CVM can say whether it allows the cloud provider to do firmware updates with or without its consent. So with or without its consent. So if the settings are set so that the cloud provider cannot do any firmware update while the TDISP session is alive, then I guess then it doesn't make sense for the history. If, however, the settings in TDISP are set so that the host can do TDISP device firmware updates without the knowledge or consent of the CVM, then obviously, the TDISP device attestation evidence can change at any time. There is no way, there's no set way to notify the CVM for that, at least not like a GHCI or something like that, as far as I know. But it is an option for the guests to try to do guest attestation whenever they want, or whenever they want to release some kind of communicate with a relying party and release a new secret. So I think this is fuzzy. There's no defined spec as far as I know on this, but it can be done either way. I hope this answers the question. That was very all over the place.
I think so. In a way, but like if this is something that is expected to be a periodic thing or a regular thing, either triggered by activity, by like a remote party doing attestations, or even on a periodic basis by the host itself, I would be concerned about the length of this log getting such that it becomes a large burden on the remote verifier to have to transfer and process. If it only happens on atypical events, like say something, a device is disconnected and reconnected, I wouldn't have the same necessarily the same concern. But I'll go ahead and yield to Usama.
Just to add to that, device firmware updates are not expected to be a very often event. Just a ballpark estimation, it will be like once every 6 months or so. So I do not expect this to be huge. It will increase if we have more TDISP devices, of course, but just an estimate.
Okay.
Yes, next question.
So I was trying to understand the conversation between Craig and you, and what I understand from that is that you are saying that if by any chance a wrong device was attached to a CVM, you have already allowed the device to get to the secrets and to its private memory, and then there is no longer any reason to protect it any further. Was that was that your reasoning for not allowing any further nonces for the next future point in times to evaluate the status of the device? Am I getting it correctly?
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
Right. So I was trying to rephrase the conversation between you and Greg. So the question, in my understanding, was what happens, or why don't you have a nonce in there for not for the platform but for the device, right? So you have platform attestation and you have device attestation, correct?
Mhm.
And his question, in my understanding, was what happens if the device status changes? And if I want to have a newer status of the device, and I would typically do a challenge response kind of a thing using a nonce, right? So far, you are with me?
Mhm.
So then what I understood from you was that you were reasoning that if I have already allowed the device
Um,
attached to the CVM, then
I
I have,
think, sorry, I just want to, my understanding is that the nonce is usually to bind a particular guest attestation request with the evidence that are returned by the device. So you know it's a way to guarantee freshness.
right, yes. But the question maybe is, are we talking about the device or the platform? So is the nonce being used in the device really? Or is it only within the
Craig's
platform?
question was on the device. So a nonce that is being used for the to obtain the TDIS device attestation evidence.
Okay, right. So my question is the same. And if I understood your answer correctly, you were reasoning that if I have allowed, I as a CVM, if I have allowed the device to be attached and it was already compromised, and I still allowed that device to be attached to the CVM, then I have already given it access to the private memory. And then it makes, then there is no point in using at a future point in time a new nonce to check the status of the device. Is this correct?
I think those are not directly related. At least in my mind, the nonce is just to guarantee freshness between the attestation request and the evidence that are being returned. So in this case for TDISP as opposed to platform. And then the other aspect is what happens if the CVM has evaluated or the verifier has evaluated some TDISP device attestation evidence with or without nonce, doesn't matter, accepted the device, and then later on we found out that this device firmware was vulnerable and might have been compromised. At this point, at the later point, even if the device firmware has been patched, the security of the entire CVM might have been compromised because by accepting a potentially malicious TDISP device, that device has access to the CVM's private memory. So I don't think it's directly related to nonce or not.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I know you have your hand up, David. I do want to point out we do have another agenda item. I think we're going to need to switch over relatively soon. So, David, if your question is a lengthy one, we might have to defer it to offline conversation. If it's quick, we might be able to. But then I'd be able, I'd ask Anna if there is, if you could, if there's more you want to present quickly in the next few minutes in order to get a point across, that would be very helpful. And David, yes, so you put your hand down. Is that fine?
I just wanted to add one tiny bit of context to answer
Go for
partially
it.
the last two questions. So for a lot of the firmware updates that happen, a lot of the times that's going to require a physical device reset on the host side, which will invalidate all these TDIs. They'll have to be forcibly removed from the CVM and then rebound. So in terms of like firmware update being an issue and notifying the CVMs, a lot of the times the device is going to enter a TDIS error state at that point. And it's going to have to go through the whole reattestation process regardless. And at that point, you can ask the in the implementations we've been seeing on the Linux kernel mailing list, you can ask the host to pull a fresh set of measurements from the device. At that point, it's going to have to pull a fresh set of measurements regardless.
Yeah, good point, David.
Mm.
Right, and Anna, if you could go ahead and try to wrap things up relatively
Yes.
quickly, that'd be great.
Yes, sorry about that. I do have the flow here on what the remote verifier can do in order to verify this information. So essentially, it will get the NV indexed quote and the event log file, and using that, it can verify the entire history and then associate it with the signed NV index value and the VTPM attestation key. So here is the proposal in a figure. The only thing that is changed from what I had presented last time is that I've added this green arrow here, which essentially binds the TDISP evidence that are returned from the hardware device with the VTPM attestation key. That's the only thing that I've added to this figure. And this completes the chain of trust by binding the platform attestation with the TDISP attestation in my mind. Here are some a little bit more details on how this NV index needs to be defined. It needs to be part of the platform hierarchy so that a guest cannot delete and redefine the NV index. I have some sample attributes on how this needs to be set, and I'm using the canonical event log record format for the log. I do have some open questions, but I think they are addressed in the questions that people have asked on why the history, what problem are we trying to solve with the history? And I mentioned that if we had a compromised TDISP device in the past, a relying party might want to consider that, even though currently the TDISP device is not compromised as far as we know. But there's also a consideration how big this log gets. There are also some questions on where's the location, the permission of the event log file. And I think that is everything for me. Thank you so much, everyone, for the questions and the engagement.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anna. This was a very interesting discussion. I think there is still a fair amount that would be fruitful to discuss around the binding of the evidence versus a binding of a policy that was brought up last time. Some of the specifics on the nature of the evidence being presented, the PCRness of it, and all of that. However, we do need to move on to the next topic. I will leave it up to you, Sam, on whether or not you think that it would be worth coming back for another meeting in the future, or if this would be best handled in offline discussion.
Okay, I'm not sure yet, but
okay. Yeah, think about that.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and then we'll go ahead and move on to Paul. Paul was going to be here to discuss CoServe. Do we have you on, Paul?
Yes, I am here. I'm sorry, I'm just fiddling with buttons. Okay.
Great, go for it. All yours.
Okay, so is that title slide coming through? I just got a slightly weird warning on my screen.
Yes,
okay. Okay, cool. So yeah, just one or two slides. I'm not in presentation mode today. Today is more for discussion, but I did just want to sort of page this back in for people, and also do a couple of quick updates since last month as well. So this is the background context. It's all about the conveyance of endorsements and reference values to the verifier. That's the bit of the RATS architecture that's in the central circle there. It's a generic, it's an idealized model, so it does hide some real-world challenges called out around the outside of the circle. So fragmentation issues caused by multiple vendors, for instance, complexity of the supply chain due to multiple endorsers or levels of indirection between the endorsers and the verifiers, wherever those live. And then there is diversity among the verifiers, different kinds of verifiers running in different environments, from cloud services all the way down to constrained nodes and different interaction models too, so push and pull, for example. So the question is, what can we do to help the industry to harmonize? And we're offering CoServe, I guess, as a useful primitive towards answering that question. So CoServe stands for the Concise Selector for Endorsements and Reference Values. There's an IETF draft for it that's linked at the bottom there. It's based on CBOR and CORIM, but it's also a query language. And it's a query language that is... hang on. Sorry. So a window just randomly jumped to the front and really disturbed me there for a second. It's based on CBOR and CORIM. It's a query language designed for RATS artifacts, trust anchors, reference values, and endorsed values. So it's super targeted at this problem space. And it is just the data format, right? But because it's just the data format, you can transact it over different transports, HTTP, REST, or COAP. And because it's a query response language, it can support push or pull models. It borrows from CORIM very heavily, and the vast majority of CoServe data model is in fact really just hash including bits of CORIM. And it's designed to facilitate interactions across these real-world or messy supply chains where there can be multi-contributing parties and integrators and aggregators. There could be these levels of indirection. The diagram shown there is only illustrative, right? CoServe is not prescriptive about what a deployment has to look like. It's really just trying to support all of these things. So that's what CoServe is, just to remind people, a common query language for vendors to harmonize on, based on CBOR and CORIM, supporting flexible interactions and transports, and supporting real-world supply chain complexity. So that's an update on the context, a reminder of the context, sorry. So the update on the draft. So first of all, very, very happy to be welcoming 2 new co-authors into the IETF draft. So we have Henk and Shafali. I'm happy that those 2 individuals will be bringing their perspectives to the design, joining Thomas and myself as we continue to evolve this as a piece of work. And of course, we do still invite collaborators as well. So if anyone senses that they might be an active stakeholder in this work, then do please join. The door is ever open. We've invested quite a lot in updating the trust model and fully supporting the various options for aggregation. Now, we did discuss this last time, and I suspect we will discuss it again today. There is a diagram here that characterizes it. I won't dive into that diagram now. I'd like to sort of get to the discussion. But let me stress once again, these are the trust models that we support, right? We're not trying to prescribe anything. So CoServe really doesn't care what your real supply chain looks like in practice. It's just trying to acknowledge and support the possibilities. The last significant update on the draft is that CORIM's notion of stateful environments is now also supported. So aspects of a tester state can be captured as measurements in a query, and this allows the provider to respond appropriately in respect of that state. Thought experiment here, something like AMD's key distribution service for SEV SNP certificates. Those things do depend on the version numbers of TCB components because they get factored into the key derivation function. So the TCB impacts the attestation key, which impacts the endorse certificate. So the endorser needs to know the attester state in cases like this. So we've updated CoServe to support that. Those are the updates. Some implementation work, right? Because we have running code. We love running code. So first of all of the CBOR data objects from CoServe are now upstreamed and mainlined in the Go CoRim library in the Verizon org, which is fantastic to see. There is also an experimental CoServe branch of the Verizon services repo, which allows Verizon to be deployed as an endorsement distributor rather than just as a verifier. Has this very simple REST API. You can transact your CoServe queries over HTTP. Just make your CBOR query, base64 encode it, put that on the URL path, and you just use a GET method to transact your query. So that's been plumbed into the existing trust anchor and reference value stores using the plugins that are already there. But we also have this framework of so-called proxy plugins, where Verizon can be used as a mediator to make CoServe compatibility for things like the NVIDIA RIM service and the AMD key distribution service, both of which we are now able to demonstrate. We're going to be working further on this. It's going to be a hackathon project in Madrid next week at IETF 123, where we're going to present our findings. But for the moment, these things are working. So we have a single. I'm quite pleased that we've got this single data format, single API, single common API, and we're able to distribute endorsement resources for things like ARM CCA or NVIDIA RIM service and AMD KDS. So very, very different technologies all being bridged together and unified using this design. Resources there are simply there for people to click on and go and find more detailed presentations, more detailed slides, and some of the other associated resources there. I won't talk about them, but use the links when the slides are shared afterwards to go and see those things. But really, the idea for today was just have a few more minutes of space for people to talk, discuss, ask questions in the time that we didn't get last time around. So let me open up the floor, having done those updates, but we can come back to any of those slides if we want to talk about those. Greg, I see your hand.
Quick question on the proxy out to AMD and NVIDIA. When does that transcribe the results from their proprietary formats to CoRim and then optionally resign? Is that what's going on?
Yes, it can do both, right? So we have in the trust models update that we put into the draft recently. We have this explicit model now of source artifacts and collected artifacts, and a CoServe provider can provide both. What we've done with, say, the NVIDIA RIM service is we have a collection process where we parse the NVIDIA CoRims and we transplant their reference values into a collected artifact, and we sign the collected artifact as the collector. So Verizon can sign that artifact. The signing part is not actually implemented yet, but the design-wise, that's how we would do it. But also there is a source artifact space in the CoServe result. So if you want the sort of verbatim originals preserving their signatures and to go and verify those separately, then the source artifacts also can be carried through, and the color coding of the signatures in my diagram there on trust models is representative of the fact that the aggregator can sign things as an authority in and of itself, but also the signatures from supply chain actor A, supply chain actor B, in this model can be just passed through.
Yeah, I think I was so thank you. I think that explains it. I think what I heard was any and all of the above are supported. It's a
Yes,
flexible model.
yeah, basically yes.
Yeah,
That's what
whatever
we're
you can
trying to
dream
do
of, it can be done here. And I guess just one meta question is, so do you view, because there's so many problems to solve here, do you view, because now you potentially have with this, if there exists a one or more super powerful transcription, capable intermediary services that allows that decreases the, it's both wonderful in a way in that it provides a common model to verifiers, but it also allows kind of the existing ecosystem to kind of remain stale into perpetuity while these intermediaries own the problem forevermore. And I don't know, other than just kind of realizing that in my head, I don't have anything to say about that. It may be a great thing or not.
Yeah, I mean, the proxying work that we've been doing, against things like NVIDIA RIM service and AMD KDS is really sort of proof of concept and just showing that, you can have a common unified data model and API to transact against all of these services. Whether proxying is the long-term correct way to do this or not, or whether we just build mindshare around CoServe and its associated HTTP bindings and whatever, and people just start just building that into their services natively, so that it just becomes the way that you have the conversation with these services, and then there is less work for a proxy to do, unless that proxy is also actively aggregating in some semantic way, pulling together bits of a combined attesting system.
Cool, thank you, Paul.
Sure. I think so. Thomas, I think you might be next.
Thanks, Paul. Yes. So I think, well, but this is a question for the group rather than for you directly, because so at the moment in the draft we have the CoServe bit is just the data model that expresses the query and the result. So the question is whether the draft should also describe the request response API to make the package fully usable in a sense. I know that there's this old mantra in the IETF. IETF doesn't do API, but that's not very true anymore. And we have Acme is an API, and there are many other instances of APIs that are specified in RFCs. So yeah, really the question is for the group whether you would like to also see the API described in there or not.
Okay, we are coming up on the top of the hour here. I'm not sure the order of hands, but there are 3 still up. And if we can try to get through those pretty quickly so that we can end the meeting, that'd be great. Hank, Gary, who's next?
I can let Hank go, and if there's time, I can go after.
I try to be quick. So yes, bindings are nice. I think other working groups chose to put the binding actually into a different document, like a dedicated reference API, for example. I'm actually interested in the diversity this query language really enables. So like the aggregation versus proxy versus you can whatever you like, right? And the transformation involved, and thereby maybe other bindings are also interesting. So I'm immediately thinking REST API, of course. I guess that's what Thomas actually said. But there's also maybe other interesting things that are more on buses. And maybe that's also interesting to understand if that is a thing that is of interest. If it's only the internet and if it's proxying like NVIDIA RIMs, sure, I guess it's all REST.
Okay. Gary?
Yeah, and so all apologies. I haven't read the draft recently. I was changing employers. At least in specific to the examples mentioned of NVIDIA RIMs and and AMD. I guess I'm a little bit confused why that needs to conform with any standard if we look at the way templates are defined with in the Verizon quorum generator. So I'm just kind of wondering what why you would feel the SOC vendor needs to actually be quorum compliant, because my understanding, looking at the sample templates that are already up on the Verizon repo, is that a quorum, whoever's interested in generating a quorum can take the RIMs in any format from the vendor, as long as they can and as long as they provide it to the necessary format for the quorum generator, and the quorum should be able to, then the quorum will still be standards compliant. So I guess I was a little bit confused on that. Did I misunderstand what was being said regarding NVIDIA and AMD?
I'm not sure I understand the question, and given the time, it's possible we may have to take this one offline.
So
Yes. How important for CoServe is it for a SOC vendor to provide reference measurements in a standardized format? Is what I'm asking. So.
Okay, I don't think I understand the question. I think it might be better if we reach out to each other, Giri, offline.
Yeah, do follow up, because I am curious about the answer on that as well.
Yeah.
So once you do sync up on that, please post it on the list.
We'll just post it on the. I'll just post it on the mailing list.
Great.
I thought
Perfect.
The question was pretty clear, but okay, I can rephrase. So,
sure.
Okay.
All right, great. So we have reached the top of the hour. I'm sure people have already been dropping off. So thank you, Anna and Paul, for the presentations. Great discussion from everybody, productive as usual. Next time, 2 weeks from now, on the 29th, we have another meeting. Mike Stunes from Azure is going to be here, still on our composite attestation discussion track. And Jim will be chairing that meeting. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Take care.
Oh, have a
Bye-bye.
good day.